President Biden knew what was coming and let it happen anyway. The embattled president addressing the nation again on what went wrong in Afghanistan after a bombshell report proves his team was warned. U.S. diplomats in Afghanistan told the administration last month that the country was on the verge of a rapid and catastrophic takeover by the Taliban. Here's what the president had to say.
The United States stands by its commitment that we've made to these people, and it includes other vulnerable Afghans, such as women leaders and journalists. We are particularly focused on our engagements on making sure every American who wants to leave can get to the airport. I have seen no question of our credibility from our allies around the world. This is about America leading the world, and all our allies have agreed with that. We've made an agreement with the Taliban thus far. They've allowed them to go through. It's in their interest for them to go through. So we know of no circumstance where American citizens are carrying an American passport are trying to get through to the airport. Let's put this thing in perspective here. What interest do we have in Afghanistan at this point with al-Qaeda gone?
Biden saying several times in that speech that there were no issues between the Taliban and Americans getting to the airport. But there are really disturbing reports that American Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said on a call that Americans are in fact being beaten by the Taliban while trying to reach the Kabul airport. The Pentagon asked about this just moments ago.
The reports Americans have been beaten by the Taliban in Kabul. Is the U.S. military under orders to stay at the airport and not go protect them?
I think we've been talking about this throughout the entire briefing. We're certainly mindful of these reports, and they're deeply troubling. And we have communicated to the Taliban that that's absolutely unacceptable, that we want free passage through their checkpoints for documented Americans. And by and large, that's happening.
Shannon, they say that there are reports of Americans being beaten by the Taliban and they're troubled by it. And then the president says, everything's fine if you want to go to the airport. I haven't heard anything.
I know. It's how do we, as normal average people, know more about this than the president does? Or is he being disingenuous? Because to say that there are no Americans having trouble getting to the airport, we all probably know people that are trying to get out. And we're all probably trying to help people. I know some personally. And there was a guy in the New York Post yesterday who said he's an American. He said he took his passport, his 3-year-old, and went to the airport on Wednesday, was 10 feet away from a U.S. Marine and could not get passage into the airport. These are not, things that are not happening. These are people putting their names and their faces to them. These are public reports. I don't understand how our president doesn't know about that or his team isn't telling him about that, where the breakdown is, but there's definitely a breakdown there. Our own Benjamin Hall, Steve Harrigan, many of our reporters who have been on the ground there for months, since last fall, have been warning about this exact thing. And Steve Harrigan said today, everyone he knows on the ground, and if you've been there on the ground, knows the reality of what's happening. How does the commander-in-chief not know?
So we don't know, Greg, if the commander-in-chief is lying or is confused. There's no way to tell.
Look, you know what he did? He checked Waze. He was like, how long does it take to get to the airport? Oh, it's 30 minutes. Everything's great. The Taliban does not show up on Waze or the GPS. It is amazing how bad he has screwed this up when you consider that this was a popular decision. Think about that. Let's say 75%, I think, of the population wanted to get out. So 75% of the population could have made this decision. All you had to do was get the exit right, and you ended the longest war ever. You would be a hero. But poor Joe couldn't do it. Instead, he pretends the argument is over the decision to pull out, not the horrible conduct associated with the pullout. So what you end up learning is that beyond the decision, he brought nothing, absolutely nothing to the table. That's frightening. We knew that. This is when I smeared the, when I slammed the media. They enabled and protected him as well as his snotty, elitist, untested Ivy League candy asses he's surrounded by. But most important, they buried the laptop story so this guy could get in. So Taliban should be thanking Jeff Zucker, Jeff Bezos, The View, everybody else who wanted that story uncovered. Or, yeah, uncovered is a good story. Or is it covered? Never mind. The whole thing is weird. The whole thing is weird because no one answers the one big question. We all know what it is. Why the Taliban? Why the Taliban? Why them? There was no other alternative over 20 years while we were there. Clearly, this is the only choice. So they just were like, hey, we're the only choice. We're just going to wait you guys out. Isn't it almost comical that a country this beloved and this desired just handed over the country to 70,000 mountain hillbillies with cell phones? What does that tell you? What does that tell you? Since the 90s, we made no progress. No progress in creating an alternative to the Taliban. It's mind-boggling. And then Obama lets their leader out, so now he's in charge. I don't know, man. It's what we witnessed was a controlled surrender to 70,000 people. We killed more than 70,000 people with ISIS.
That's right. And they have more than cell phones now, Dagan. They have Humvees, they have drones, they have Blackhawks, they have night vision goggles, they have billions in U.S. military
Right,
equipment.
I was going to go through, I have it on my phone, the list of the flood of weapons that has fallen into the Taliban's hands. Greg, before I move on, the progress has been our counterterrorism operation. Combat operations ended in 2014, and the counterterrorism is denying a haven to al-Qaeda. And not only have we not had a major terror attack on U.S. soil, we also hadn't had a casualty in Afghanistan for about a year and a half. And to quote Jennifer Griffin, the incomparable Jennifer Griffin, she said, we were in Afghanistan to stop partners, to stop terrorism from brewing, from growing. And our partners have now been abandoned. They're in hiding. They've disappeared. We don't have eyes and ears on the ground. And this, we're going to talk about it later, this over-the-horizon capability is laughable. I will go into it in the next block, but we're going to be flying drones that by the time they get to Afghanistan from the Persian Gulf have very little time to actually do any work. But I keep hearing this word humiliating, that this has been a humiliating week. No, not for Americans, not for our service members, those who served and sacrificed, those who are there, those who are going into Afghanistan now. It is infuriating and frightening. Every American listening to this garbage from this garbage president has every right to be pissed off. The only humiliating thing is the only humiliation is on Joe Biden and the people who work for Joe Biden in the White House, in his administration. Fellow Democrats should be humiliated. And of course, to your point, all the media grifters and the hucksters and the swindlers who sold this broken bobblehead to the American people. Not only is he's a liar, but maybe he's delusional, he's inept, and he's a cipher. And he's our commander-in-chief, and that's why we're suffering through this right now.
Richard?
Listen, I'm humiliated, but I'm not humiliated just at Joe. I'm humiliated at every president that got us to this particular point. It started with George Bush and this mission to go get Osama bin Laden. That's why we started in Afghanistan. Then it turned into, oh, we're going to build a democracy, which clearly the people of Afghanistan did not want. So here we are, 20 years later, with a botched exit. And when this war started, just for context, I was a freshman in high school. Right? I had classmates, people in my high school that went to fight in Afghanistan, right? Thinking that they were there to stop the terrorists. Now here we are, 20 years later, we've had members of Congress year after year after year vote for a budget approving more money to Afghanistan, more money to Afghanistan forces. For what? To what avail? To what point? Right? Because this is where we are. Where we are now is the Taliban is in control. And guess what? There are at least 3 presidents that knew that the Taliban was stronger than the Afghan government. The Obama administration knew because they were negotiating with them. The Trump administration knew because they were negotiating with them. And the Biden administration knew because they are currently in negotiations with the Taliban. So the Afghan government was a fail from the beginning. And this is frustrating for somebody who saw this war start when I was a teenager and didn't get a chance to actually have my say in a presidential election until 2008. Some of my classmates didn't get the same right, and they went to go fight in this war.
But you have to keep 2 things separate. One is that going to war was a decision based on what happened to us. We didn't start anything. It started,
Absolutely.
yeah. But I think both of these things can be right. That we reduced the threat of terror, but they want Taliban. They don't want us there.
No.
They don't want us there.
No.
So it's time to go. But that's not even the debate. The debate is how we went.
And you know, I think I will say this. I think it's Monday morning quarterbacking to think that whichever president was charged with getting us out could have made it any better. There was no telling
Well, I'll tell you
of
what,
what going out would have looked like.
It couldn't have gone worse.
Oh, of course it could. Of course it couldn't have gone worse. Of course it couldn't have gone any worse. But there's no telling.
Needs to own
there's
that.
no.
Okay?
Absolutely
And he hasn't
agree.
owned it
I
so
absolutely
far.
agree
All
with
right?
you. But
Good.
it wouldn't have mattered who
Well,
did it.
we're both
It would have
mad.
been bad.
Not this
We were
bad,
negotiating with the Taliban
Not
to
this
begin
bad,
with.
Richard. You know he screwed it up.
Once you're negotiating with the Taliban, it's game over.
Richard,
and that's
screwed
three
it up.
presidents.
He screwed it up.
That's
and we
three
gotta
presidents.
Go.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.